Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. Welcome back to our Sunday night live stream. Thank you very much, Burnt Orange Horn. I appreciate any birthday wishes you guys throwing out there. Of course, no better birthday present than Longhorns being the #1 team in the country again, which they are. So we'll get to that. Of course, that is first and foremost. Of course, we'll get to all of your questions, your comments. We'll address as many of them as we can. So throw them out there. We also will dive into, of course, Texas' upcoming opponent for this week, the Oklahoma Sooners. It's Texas OU week, ladies and gentlemen. You damn right about that, William. It's 7-13, and OU still sucks and always will. Of course, we are pleased to be joined. I'm lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis, pleased to be joined by two fellow lifetime Longhorns. We got the young prodigy, CJ Vogel, who's back from the wedding. I want some wedding stories, CJ. All right, so go get some wedding stories from CJ. And, of course, the legend, Bobby Burton, joining us as well. Thank you, Bobby, for joining us. And thank all you guys for joining us. And thank you for the birthday wishes. I'm 44 years old. I'm an old man. It's official. All right. So I'm an old man today, but I'm feeling blessed because my Longhorns are really good. And it's been a really good year for me because I've been a dad. My first year as a dad. So really good year for me. All right. So really good year for the Longhorns too. So maybe that coincides. Let's start out, gentlemen, talking about the weekend that was. And of course, we'll get into some other topics, but a lot of upsets over the weekend, guys. And Bobby, I'll start with you. You had Alabama go down. You had 1-4, was it 1-4, 9, 10, and 11?
Yep.
All go
and
down
almost eight.
And almost eight
on Sunday morning at like 10 midnight, you know.
Good week to be on a bye week if you're a Longhorns. I felt like that. What are your thoughts, Bobby? I'll start with you. Give me your thoughts, and I'll get to CJ. I know CJ was distracted because I know he got something going on with the wedding. But
CJ was playing groomsman, I think, or usher, or something like that. I would say this: Matt, our producer, did a good job with the video we put out this morning. Called it chaos, and I completely agree. That's kind of what it took. And then I talked about it a lot, and I've been thinking about it. And I just feel like it's a lot of parity in college football. And I feel like whether that's because of the transfer portal, whether because more and more coaches are getting better with their play calling or personnel decisions and that sort of thing. I just feel like there's more parity in college football right now than maybe at any point we've seen in the last 20 to 25 years. Now, maybe that's just anecdotal. I'll be honest, but that's what I feel. Like when Vanderbilt can beat the #1 team in the country, there's some parity going on.
Crazy.
And when Vandy's quarterback, who just transferred from New Mexico State, outplays the leading Heisman candidate because he clearly outplayed him.
Yeah,
that's parity. So when one position on the field can do that to another team. Maybe that's where football is going generally, even at some level. Is a quarterback is a great equalizer. We'll see.
No, you're right about that. Good point.
That's a pretty interesting point there, Bobby, because I mean, you look at it from the outside, it's Vanderbilt upsets Alabama, and everybody goes bonkers over the win, and then you look back and see how that team was constructed and the pieces that they needed to go out and add. Because let's remember, Vanderbilt lost a pair of wide receivers to the portal, and yet you're able to hang 40 on Alabama. Hey, you did something well, but it starts with the quarterback and the construction there. Really impressive win, right? And for the folks that were, kind of carrying around the goalpost down Broadway afterward, that looked like a blast. I can't even imagine what those scenes were like, but what a weekend. And, it's weeks 6, 7 going into Texas OU right now. And Texas, you have to feel good because you're coming off the bye. You have the #1 by your name again. And it's interesting, right? There's a lot of parity right now, but we also see it that there's just not those dominant teams that we expected coming into the season, right? You thought Georgia would be in there after the strong start to the season. They lost to Alabama. We just saw Alabama lost. And all of a sudden, everybody that we thought was going to be good there's plenty of question marks. So a lot going on in college football. And again, it was a great time for a bye if you're a Texas fan. Can't lose on a bye, that's for sure.
Hey, Rod, I have one other question for you, actually, and what you thought of them. But I talked to Jerry about this earlier today. What do you think about the fact that now it's pretty clear Texas is going to play opponents the rest of the way, other than OU? The rest of the way, Texas opponents will be more run heavy than Texas, period. And actually, they all won this past weekend, the ones that played. So whether that's Vanderbilt or Florida or A&M, who looked really good at times on Saturday, Georgia ran the ball well. They all, and Texas does not run the ball that well. I mean, is that going to be a problem for the Longhorns in pieces? I mentioned this and asked the same question to Jerry earlier today, but I also look at it and say, well, Patrick Mahomes won 2 Super Bowls in a row, and their run game's kind of, is that what's your take on that? That power run that the SEC has? Because I saw Arkansas do that to Tennessee, and Arkansas is going to have a better run game, I think, than the Longhorns. They'll have a quarterback that can run, and they've got 2 big running backs.
The only concern is that if the running game is successful in converting, getting you into third and manageable, you can limit possessions for Texas. And if you want to eliminate the Sark run, which usually puts you out of a game, and that's when Texas ends up going on those runs, 7-8 minute stretch where they score 3 touchdowns, and you look up, you're out of the game. It happens. It happened. We've seen it happen in year 1 with Sark, and it still happens, obviously in year 4 with Sark. But I think now he's got more complementary pieces to complete that run that they go on. But when you limit possessions, and Mississippi State did a good job of it, Jeff Levy, you can't. And Texas obviously didn't help themselves with these self-inflicted wounds. But if things fall your way, you can limit the run that Sark usually goes on, which makes it a blowout. And against Mississippi State, Texas didn't go on that run to the 4th quarter. And then so Mississippi State was in that game to the 4th quarter because they were running the ball. They ran it 50 times. Did they run it effectively? 3 yards per carry. But what's your definition of effectiveness? Or are you just trying to control? Because the run game allows you to control the game. That's the run game allows you to do. You control the game. Yeah, the passing game is prolific elite, but you can throw a lot of yards, not necessarily be able to control the game. Because the running game allows you to control the game and because you limit possessions and you control the time. All right, you can milk the time, and that's what you want to do against Sark. You want to limit time and limit possessions. So if the running game is successful, that will be one of the only ways I think it actually can work really well to counter a Sark blueprint. That Sark won't have that quintessential run. But when you limit possessions, maybe there's a turnover in there, maybe there's a 3 and out in there somewhere, and then Texas, their offense looks clunky. All right, and that's what you want to cause the offense to look clunky, and then you deny them the ability to separate from you. And I think that's what you can do when you can run the football against Texas effectively. Now, I don't know if Texas run defense is elite or not. We don't really know. Michigan wasn't able to run the football against Texas. Mississippi State tried. They ran it 50 times, but they weren't able to necessarily get, in my opinion, any chunk yards in the running game. They still only average 3 yards per carry. So the real question is, how good is Texas run defense? Because we don't really know. I don't think we know yet, and Georgia will probably be the ultimate test for it.
I guess I'm asking a little bit different than that. I'm asking about Texas's lack of a power run game by comparison to its opponents. Is that because Sark won't be able to necessarily control the clock as much, is what you're saying?
Sark doesn't care about that, in my opinion. I think that matters very little to Sark. Okay. Sark's about putting points on the board, and he's about scoring as quick as possible. So for Sark, he doesn't care really about that. But I do think when you go up against Sark, you should want to limit his possessions. You don't want to give him a lot of possessions because he will score. He's going to score. All right? The only thing you can do to really limit that is how many times you give him the football to limit how many times he scores. So I don't necessarily think Sark – I know Sark wants to – he talks balance. He does. He talks balance a lot. I think he's talking about the entire football game. I think he's talking about 4 quarters. And when you look at 4 quarters, you'll say, damn, look at that offense. They were pretty balanced. But go look at the early part of the game. Go look at the actual script. Go look at the early game pass rate for Sark in big games and every game. And by the way, and CJ's done a deep dive on this. Guys, he's pass heavy all the time. Oh, yeah. Don't let him lie to you and tell you that he's going to be run heavy. He has never been a run heavy guy at the beginning of big games. Never, ever. And he won't start now. Not with this backfield. I guarantee it. So he's going to be right now. They're going to be against Oklahoma. I went down with 70% early game, early down pass rate. That's what Arch was approaching in his second start. That's what Quinn was approaching the last start he had before he got hurt. That's what they are. They're a pass first offense. And Sark I know he wants balance, but he's talking about balance over an entire game. When you go look at when he's actually in his bag creatively, when he is trying to get the upper hand on the opponent, which is the script, the 40 play script as we call it, whatever it is. Go look at the pass rate, guys. It's through the roof. He is not a balanced coordinator when it comes to that early game situational script. And to me, that shows you who he really is. The script is who you really are. The balance of the game, that's when you get up big in the game. You want to run it, run out the clock, do this, do that. No. Who are you in the script? That's who you wanted to be. That was your vision. That's what you were trying to be in that game is the script. And I think that's who Sark shows you who he is. And he's a pass first guy. He is.
I completely agree. I mean, we saw it. You mentioned it in that Arch second start. It started to look more like what we've seen with Quinn and the starts to games there. And, you know, I think, was it about the UTSA game? It was 16 of the first 20 plays were passes for the Texas offense. And you start looking at it in that sense. And, of course, you have some, you know, dinged up running backs. But to your point, Rod, 100%. I think that he wants to open it up early. And when it comes to playing the style of football that he wants to play, talking about Sarkisian, it's out front. You know, got to get that early lead. And that's also how you limit that power run game for our opponents is how can you continue to score and keep drives moving if you're down 20 points, right? And that's what that Mississippi State game turned into late was when they were forced to throw the football and Texas was able to pin its ears back. They had 6 sacks, but that took a while to get to that point where they felt comfortable enough with that lead. And, of course, going into an Oklahoma game and a Georgia game, and now even Vanderbilt, how about a full gauntlet right there, right? But these next 3 weeks, it's going to be very important that Texas gets out to early leads. That way you control the game clock, control what the opponent's able to do with their time of possession. So, again, Oklahoma specifically, where we saw turnovers last year, kind of mold that whole game. Take care of the football, get off to an early lead, and you should be able to play on your own time, if that makes sense for Sark.
Remember that Michigan game, guys, and Sark said it was because of weather or something like that. Remember they won the toss and took the ball. And I wonder, Bobby, since they're going up against these run, because if you allow a run-heavy team to get the ball early, Mississippi State, that was a perfect example of it. So, we're going to take 7-8 minutes off the clock. We're going to basically take a quarter of football away from you. And that's what they're going to try to do. And hell, it happened in that bowl game against Washington for other reasons, the fumble, but it took the third quarter away from Texas. Texas had no third quarter in that game. If you can do that essentially against Sark, you already you got the upper hand because you just limit possession. So I wouldn't be surprised against those run-heavy teams you're talking about, Bobby, if Texas anticipates that if they do win that coin toss, they might take the ball. And then, like CJ says, get up in the game. Therefore, you dictate terms and dictate tempo rather than have it dictated to you.
Yeah, Roddy called it. Sark said he wanted the ball first so he could, in case Texas late in the game had the ball in the fourth quarter, so that they had the wind in their back. And for folks at that game, there wasn't a whole lot of wind.
I've got to say this. I agree with getting on top of them. A team that is complementary football. For how Texas plays the game. And it reminds me of how Bob Stoops used to take the ball back when Oklahoma was running it up on people. He'd want to get up on top of it and just basically make these offensive players or the opposing offense almost one-dimensional. And we'll see how that goes. I was curious because I do feel after watching the weekend that Texas is going to face teams that run the ball better or more powerful than they do. They can get into third and shorts maybe more easily than Texas will be able to. And so that's gonna create some issues.
It's the SEC. I'm with you, Bobby. I think so too. And this is one thing that not worried me, but something that I observed that I think is something that will have me recalculating some of my predictions for the season. The road games, all those big upsets were at home for teams Texas has to play on the road.
Yep.
Right? Vanderbilt at home beat Bama. Arkansas at home, they beat Tennessee. A&M at home, they beat Missouri. Actually, they were the favorite in that. But anyway, you know my point. Like they perform. But even though they were, I think, the favorite, they weren't expected to beat the hell out of Missouri. I ain't expect them to beat Missouri like they stole something. I mean, that Missouri looks like a bad team in that game against A&M. I guess we can start there. Let's start talking about the individual upsets a little bit. Then we'll get to the overall thing. But first, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at Rogue Shop, our sponsor for our Sunday night live stream. Rogue Shop, bringing you real plant medicine and bringing it back to its roots. Make sure you use the promo code on Texas for that special discount at rogueshop.com. Rogue Shop has it all, folks, from oils and creams to flour, gummies, and vitamins. Again, that's rogueshop.com. They ship nationwide, so no matter where you are in the Owen Texas football family, they can get it to you. Use the code on Texas, and that's rogueshop.com. Rogue Shop bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. They have it all, folks. Like I said, from oils and creams, flour, gummies, whatever you can think of, rogueshop.com. They can supply for you. That's rogueshop.com. And remember, use the code on Texas. All right, before we continue here, we'll get some of the questions, of course. But what you guys think about the individual upsets? I'm sure you guys got a chance to check out some of these matchups. Let's start with the Aggies. Start with our rivals, and we'll make our way to Alabama, Vanderbilt, the biggest upset of the weekend. But what do you guys think about A&M beating up on Missouri? Like I said, they were favored, so not upset specifically, but the way they played, I think the Aggies made a statement with the way they played at home, right? Bobby, are you feeling that they made a statement?
I watched the game. It was a snowball.
Yeah.
And they laid it on it. I felt like the Aggies played really, really well. It's probably the most complete game we've seen from them in 3 or 4 years. Connor Wegman looked really good when he had time to throw. That may be the biggest takeaway. We said preseason, I thought Missouri was going to lose something this year. I thought they were going to lose something this year strictly because I thought they had started graduating a lot of these defensive players that Barry Odom had brought in as a defensive head coach. And that's what it looked like to me on Saturday. The A&M wide receiver core is not that good. They looked great against Missouri. And part of that is that Connor Wegman, I don't know that his jersey got dirty all day.
Yeah.
And so he had all day and then some to throw, unlike against Notre Dame, where he looked very pedestrian or even bad to mediocre, right? Notre Dame got after him. Missouri couldn't get anywhere close. They had a couple of plays early in the game, Missouri did, that were returned. One of them was a 75-yard touchdown. They got called back. Another was a reception that was questionable that maybe should have been called. My point being in that category, Rod and CJ, I felt it was a lot of things going right for the Aggies on Saturday, but it was also Missouri's not as good as people thought they were. They just not. I mean, Brady, I'll say this, they have no run game. Last year they had a run game to supplement Brady Cook and Luther Burden. This year they have no run game. And so teams are just sitting back and waiting for them to pass. And it's really hurting them, I think.
When you get up to a 34-0 lead over a top 10 team, you're doing something right. And to your point, it's probably was the most complete game we've seen out of a Texas A&M team in quite some time. Even to the point where you watching that game, it felt like Missouri was slow, right? They didn't kind of exude that speed. I think a little bit of that is a testament to the defense for A&M flying around. It was pretty tough back there in the pocket for Brady Cook all afternoon. And on top of that, when your strength is all those playmaking wide receivers, but you can't get them the ball, well, you're doing something good up front. Nick Scourton, the Shamars, Stewart and Turner, they were going having a pretty nice field day in the backfield there as well. But on A&M, I think for not just the program there, that's a big win for Connor Wakeman. And when you're out for a few weeks and you have your backup come in and, they start, having that conversation of, is this our quarterback or are we going to have a competition come in, play a top 10 team in Missouri? And I'd say silence some folks, Bobby. And especially whenever you look at that stat sheet, I think there were 12 or 13 different pass catchers for A&M. So when you talk about maybe they don't have that number one guy yet, they had a lot of guys involved against Missouri. So I would say that statement win certainly surprised me. I wasn't expecting a blowout to any degree there, but that road game is going to be a little bit more difficult, I would say. Yeah.
No, and I wonder, this is the question for A&M, how much of that is, as Bobby mentioned, Missouri's just overrated, lost a lot of pieces. This is a team that's just regressed from last year, or that Aggie offense just getting better with a new offensive system, new play caller, Connor Wigman's health, obviously playing a role there too. And that's for Longhorn fans to watch. Like that watch it is. So whoever the next opponent is for the Aggies, does that offense look like it's progressing, getting better? Because if it does, that could be a concern, because that's something that I think has been hindering the Aggies. The defense has been there. I think they got a good defense, has been there. But the offensive line and the offense seems to find their identity. That could be something to watch. Also, I said the same thing about Arkansas, and I assumed Tennessee would beat Arkansas. I said it could be a trap game, but I said, honestly, it'll just tell us more about what Arkansas is, because Arkansas had had that overtime loss to, was it Oklahoma State that overtime lost to the Aggies by 1 score. We weren't sure, what the Arkansas Razorbacks, what they were going to present if they actually were a real contender. Against Tennessee, they showed, maybe more contender than pretender. Definitely fighting for Sam Pittman's job. CJ, I'll throw it to you. What were your thoughts? They finished that game with Malachi Singleton, the backup quarterback, because Taylor Green ended up getting hurt. Still pulled off the upset over Tennessee and did a lot of it with defense.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah, it was interesting. I wasn't able to watch that game specifically. I was doing my groomsman duties at the wedding, but I remember checking the score and seeing the final of a 19-14 game in which we had talked about it coming into this game. Tennessee was the best rushing offense outside of Army, I believe, north of 300 yards on the ground so far this year per game. We talk about their explosive plays, their top 5 in points per drive so far this year. We've seen them hang, 60 and 70 points on certain teams already this year. They did not play that game that they wanted to play. And we talked about it, Arkansas mucking up the Warriors a little bit. They owned 35 minutes of time of possession against Tennessee. They did not want Tennessee to find its rhythm in a way that Tennessee probably would have liked to have had coming into this game, to rely on that ground game. Do not let your freshman quarterback or redshirt freshman quarterback get flustered by the big environment. And he, for the most part didn't, but you didn't see the big moments for Tennessee in this game. And, I think Pittman specifically, big game for him in the sense that his trenches stood up, and that was the big weakness coming into the year is what can that offensive line do? Well, when you go up against a Tennessee and you have 35 minutes of time of possession and come away with a ranked win over a top 5 team at home, you got to feel pretty nice about that. That hot seat's getting a little cooler now. We'll see if that the rest of that season hangs up.
Yep.
Josh Heupel's offense, I watched the game, and Josh Heupel's offense gets stunted when you can play 2 high safeties and just control the line of scrimmage with 5 or 6 linemen or front 4, 5 or 6 guys, Rod. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
It's been that way. That offense has been that way. When Art Briles ran it, it's the veer and shoot. When they line up the receivers out wide, so you have to commit to the box versus the receivers. When you can play 2 high safeties, that's what Arkansas was able to do and do it effectively. Completely. I mean, look, Nico Iamaleava. I got to say that. It's a tongue twister. He's not that good. I'm going to say this right now. Very typical Baylor quarterback.
Wow.
He's not Robert Griffin. He's more Bryce Petty, better arm than those guys.
A system guy.
Very much a system guy at this point. And as long as he's with Josh Heupel, that's all that may be all he ever is. He's a less talented Marcus Mariota for me. Doesn't have the suddenness of a Mariota and is inaccurate. I think the people that made him the number 1 player in the country over Arch Manning are going to be really, really wrong. That's my opinion. I will say this as well. Tennessee's offensive line is not as good as last year. No chance. They could impose their will in the run game. This year, they're just not as good. I mean, they lost a couple guys to the NFL that were fairly high picks, I believe.
Yeah.
And they're just not as good. So you look around, and my take of it is they're playing with a young quarterback. They're not as good. They had some injuries at wide receiver yesterday as well. But of all the things that I look at, Rod, is Arkansas is going to try to hold people under 20 points. And if they do that in Fayetteville, they're probably going to win. So Texas is going to have to score 27-34 against Arkansas to win.
Yep.
I was impressed by Arkansas's defense, much more so than their offense. I don't know what the prognosis is for Taylon Green, their quarterback. He looked
Sam
like
Pittman said he could have went back in the game, but he kept him out. That's what
he went back in. He went back in for one play and looked pathetic.
Yeah.
He looked like he was walking on one leg.
Yeah. He said he could have returned, but didn't want to risk it.
Here's what I would say to you. If it's better to go with the guy that's healthy than Taylon Green, because an unhealthy Taylon Green from a running perspective takes away his best asset.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they did the right move by going with the other guy. I was worried, frankly, that the kid may have had an MCL because he hyperextended his knee on a low hit, and then tried to walk it off, but couldn't really. If that, you know what I mean? When you see a guy's knee literally come backwards on a low hit, that's what his did. And him without mobility is not a very Taylon Green without mobility is a very subpar quarterback.
Yeah.
To his credit, he took care of the football last night, and that was one of the big issues that plagued him in AT&T Stadium against Texas A&M. Again, you look at it, probably I'll say it this way. They had plenty of opportunities to win that football game against Texas A&M, and they did not. And that was the story of the Oklahoma State game, where I believe they had 250 more yards, and the turnovers, the costly, mistakes and opportunities that they did not take advantage of. That's what cost them that game. They took care of the ball at home against Tennessee, and that was the difference maker there.
Yeah. Biggest upset, obviously, over the weekend, number one Bama falling to Vanderbilt, and didn't see that coming in a million years. The number one team in Alabama of all falling to Vanderbilt hadn't happened in a really long time. Guys, your thoughts? I mean, it's before we get back to some Texas football, your thoughts on the biggest upset over the weekend. Vanderbilt, obviously, that's something Texas has to confront as well. They have to go on the road to play Vanderbilt. I think it's actually good for Texas that the Vanderbilt got their big upset win of the season, because they might be emotionally now kind of might be mostly exhausted. I don't know if they got another one in them of this magnitude. But Vandy's going to be a much more formidable opponent than Texas initially thought. Looks like Vandy might be more for real than we initially thought.
This game kind of struck me as, what was it, the 2021 Texas Tech game, where it just felt like Texas couldn't get off the field defensively. They couldn't come up with that one big play, a turnover, the third and fourth down conversions. For whatever reason, right in that game, it was Joey McGuire going for it on fourth down about 8 times, I think. Vanderbilt was 12 of 18 on third downs against an Alabama defense.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. They had 42 minutes of time of possession. They played their style of football and dominated in that aspect, right? And for Alabama to put up 35 points in 17 minutes, that's pretty darn impressive as well. But more so to me, it was kind of that magical playmaking ability of a Diego Pavia. And we talked about it on the onset earlier today. He's a heck of a football player. And for anybody that was able to watch him a year ago in New Mexico State, I mean, you knew he was a talented player. How much would that be able to translate to the SEC? Well, we found out pretty well last night what kind of football player he can be and, the overall impact he has. I have a lot of questions about the Alabama secondary as well. And if you go back, I think someone commented, earlier in the show, over the last 6 quarters, 67 points that Alabama defense has allowed. That's it's not Nick Saban's secondary. And so that a lot more questions about Alabama after this game. I thought we knew that Vanderbilt would be a team that could give a test. I think at least I want to pat myself on the back a little bit. I thought this game could be a little close on our pregame show. Just in the sense that it's one of those look ahead, you come off of your emotional victory against Georgia. You're playing Vanderbilt. You're going on the road. We saw how much red was in the stands there. It felt almost like a home game for Alabama as well. But that I think that also just speaks to the depth of the SEC as well.
Yeah, no doubt.
I watched the game, and I will say that Alabama's secondary is bad. I mean, Pavia finished 16 of 20. He's not an 80% passer. I'll just put that out there. And it wasn't like they were wide open. A lot. They were not contested throws. I am not as worried about Vanderbilt maybe as some people are after that game, because of that fact. Texas will play better in the secondary against they. I mean, look, they completed, I think, 3 of those 12 of 18 you talked about, Rod. I think 3 or 4 of those 12 of 18s, the success ones, were 3rd and 12 or longer.
Wow.
Yeah. You got it right when you said, CJ said their secondary is not very good. I concur. Alabama is atypically bad in the secondary right now.
And they've got dudes. It's
Malachi Moore's not a dude anymore for me, by the way he acted. By the way, that was bad stuff.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, that was
petty, and I don't care what kind of competitor you are. That was over the top. So
yeah. Well, 3 of Texas' biggest road games, of course, of the season, they are coming off some of the biggest wins in the history of their program. So there'll be a lot of momentum for those games for A&M, for Arkansas, and for Vandy. Let's talk. We'll get to some of the questions here in a second. My man CB says, "Happy birthday to legendary Rod B." Thank you very much, CB. I appreciate the birthday love there and the super chat. Very kind of you, CB. I appreciate that. But Jordan Jones says, "Does anyone else think that it will be a rivalry week rematch in the SEC championship game with Texas versus Texas A&M? I seriously think that this is the most likely scenario to happen at this point." Wow. Man, do you imagine what would happen in the state of Texas if there was a Texas A&M SEC championship game? I haven't done the math. I'll admit, Jordan, I haven't looked at it. Thank you for the question. I haven't looked at math. I haven't looked at tiebreaker scenarios, any of that stuff. But what do you guys thoughts about A&M finishing that strong?
I think they got a real chance at it, Rod. I mean, they've got the clearest path to the SEC championship game of any team other than Texas.
Crazy.
I mean, A&M controls its own destiny in that regard.
Wow.
You know, they've really got one game where they're unlikely to be favored, and that's Texas. The rest of the games this year, they'll likely be favored, right? Maybe not LSU, but LSU's doesn't have a defense worth anything.
They're not a world beater. Yeah, they're not a world beater.
I mean, and that game's in College Station.
All of their tough games are at home this year. It's their schedule again very favorable. They have Mississippi State next week, LSU, South Carolina, New Mexico State, Auburn, and then Texas to wrap it up. That's as favorable a path you will find in the entire SEC.
Auburn might give them a little. Auburn's going to sneak up on somebody this year. Somebody's going to be sleeping, and Auburn's going to beat because Hugh Freeze can coach offense, by the way.
It should have been Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh Freeze can make chicken salad out of you-know-what sometimes on offense, and he doesn't have a horrible defense. They stood in there toe-to-toe with Georgia for a half. Georgia, by the way, is becoming a true second-half team right now. They are very bad in the first half and very good in the second half. They did it against Clemson. They did it against Alabama. They did it against Auburn this past weekend. They're a second-half team right now. Something to keep in mind when they come to Austin in a couple of weeks.
I was about to say, they might play right in the Sark's hands, honestly. You might want to watch that.
Well, the thing that Texas has that Alabama doesn't, that Auburn doesn't, Texas has a good secondary.
They do.
Yep. And a pass rush.
And they got a pass rush. Yep. Do they have a running game to close a game out? That's the question.
That's where I was coming in. Is
you can run and close out that game. Yeah, because Sark wants to open with the pass, but close with the run. Can you close with the run against Georgia if that's the way you want to go? That would be so. You're right about that, Bob. It's a good point. That'll come up in that scenario if Georgia's that true second half team you talk about. But no, good point there, Jordan, about the Aggies. I hadn't realized it, so we'll see. We got a lot on the line and a lot obviously to play out before the Longhorns and the Aggies face off. MJF says at 44, what body parts hurt the worst without riding? Knees, back, shoulders. Need reading glasses yet? No, I don't need reading glasses yet, but I am starting to use like my phone light than reading like menus sometimes at restaurants. So that might be coming. Like some of the print, like the receipts and stuff, and I got to use my light. That's a little embarrassing. Only my shoulders hurt. I had 4 shoulder surgeries in the league, so my shoulders are a mess. I got to throw like Rich Gannon, like them sideways throws. I can't even throw.
Rich Gannon.
Yeah, you know that Rich Gannon.
Hey, he was cashing checks at age 44 in the NFL, maybe. That ain't bad.
That would be nice. Rick says the Red River rivalry was in 74. Lord willing, this will be the 50th anniversary of my first game at the Red River rivalry. The 50th year is the year of the Lord's Jubilee. The captives are released in the Jubilee. Wow.
50 years, man.
Wow.
Dedication.
That's a lot of memories in there.
That is fantastic, man. You should write a book or something, Rick. We appreciate you, brother. No doubt about that. Getting back to it, Todd says, what surprises do you think PK will deploy there at Texas OU? That is, I'm not sure. Him and PK and Johnny Nance have done a really good job. They've actually thrown out a lot of creative concepts that I didn't think they would use this early in the season. But we've seen, the NASCAR package. We've seen the three high safety defense. We've seen some inverted Tampa 2 that we didn't see last year. Last week they broke out, or at least 2 weeks ago, the concept where they put the edges over the B gap to try to find a matchup advantage in pass rush and confuse blocking schemes. I'm not sure what they'll do. I know there'll be something we haven't seen in the Texas OU game. I'm not sure what it will be at this point. CJ, you study stuff a lot too. I'm not sure exactly what they'll deploy. I know what they'll try to take away, and I'm sure they're gonna try to take away the running game for the Sooners and force the Sooners with Michael Hawkins, to beat you with him as a pocket passing quarterback and put a spy on him and force him to beat you from the pocket. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the plan.
That has to be the plan, especially when you consider what the health is looking like in the Oklahoma wide receiving room as well. They're down to option 7, 8, 9 so far in their unit. I look at it from the sense of, what does Texas do in the big moments and big games? Defensively, well, we see the big plays behind the line of scrimmage, and that's what I want to see Texas utilize a bit more from their linebackers, right? Alabama a year ago, what were some of the biggest plays that we saw? Well, it was the 2 sacks from Anthony Hill coming off the edge, and it was David Benda getting chopped on a blitz and chasing down Jalen Milroe for a sack as well. I'm thinking that you're going to see some creativity from the Texas linebackers coming in on blitzes, and that could be a delay, that could be a stunt, that could be a twist, whatever it might be. Let those athletic linebackers get up the field and get after them. And the issue there is, if you miss, if you get chipped, there's a running lane. But I think you'll be able to find some sort of success there because of how athletic they are. The issue, again, watch out for the legs, because we've seen it already. Hawkins is a pretty darn good athlete.
Yeah. I think you got to spy him when you get a chance. In a passing situation, you got to spy him, but +1 in the running game will be a problem. Rogue Shop. Hey, how about that? Rogue Shop. Appreciate them. RogueShop.com. How do you guys have as the best running back for UT this year, Blue or Weisner? How do you guys have as the best running back? Who do you guys have as the best running back this year, Blue or Weisner? Bobby,
you would not have asked this question. Wouldn't have been asked last week, right? Before last week, we would just said Blue and gone on down the road.
Yes, agreed.
And now, because the big game was so bad, it has you second guessing the whole thing.
Well, on the other side, Weisner was also pretty darn good. And I think it's twofold there. 13 carries, 88 yards. He had the longest rush of the season so far for a running back, close to 40 yards. There's something about the way that Weisner kind of just maneuvers his way in that front seven that just, it excites me as a runner. I don't know if it's a vision thing. I don't know if it's a patience thing, but it feels sometimes like it's just a little forced for Jaden Blue on those stretch zones, and I get the speed. It just takes a little sliver and he's gone, but you got to find the sliver. And so far this year, he's not done that consistently, right? He's only had the 20-yard run as his long so far. And as a guy with, 4.2, 4.3 speed, you'd expect that to be a bigger part of his game. And we just haven't seen it so far.
I still think it's Blue. It was a very disappointing game. Had his best game of his career and his worst game of his career in back-to-back games. I don't even know how often that happens. That's very rare. So I'm thinking it was more psychological for Jaden Blue. I think he was riding high. He just wasn't focused. He was distracted. I'm not sure what was going on with the young man. I'm still going to say Blue because, and I still think for Sark, it's Blue. I'm just looking at targets. I'm looking at touches. For Sark, Blue is a catalyst for the offense. Wisner may offer him a solution, and to the issues that arise because of maybe Blue's inconsistency or ball security issues. And yeah, if he's got ball security issues, then Blue can't play. Like, it's just that simple. But I don't think he has a ball security issue. I don't think it's systemic with him. I just think, I think that last game for him was one of the worst games he's ever played. I think he's going to bounce back strong. So I'm still going to say Blue, but I think now you can use them both because to CJ's point, Wisner offers you a physicality that none of us expected. He's finishing runs with a bold physicality and punishing physicality. I didn't even see in his skill set. So maybe he can run some of those inside power concepts that you want to run, and maybe he can run inside zone a little bit better than Blue can. Like, I'm not sure. I think there's a place for Wisner now, and maybe you can run the pony package now that you got Blue and Wisner potentially. But I still say it's Blue, in my opinion. But
I'll say this: the thing that Blue, and Rod used the term catalyst. I agree to a level. Sark loves using him in the passing game because his acceleration, even though Trey Wisner, when he's healthy, has great acceleration, in my opinion. I mean, maybe not great, but really, really high level acceleration. Yeah. Jaden Blues is elite. And so it's that play against Michigan. He caught the ball in stride and he made one move and he got 15 extra yards because nobody has the chance to get over to even help that outside the corner on that play, Rod. In a situation where they're in zone, by the way. The other team's in zone. And so I feel like that's why Blue's the best. But CJ, this is a question for you. How many touches does Blue have in his career, and how many fumbles does he have? Because I think it's 4 fumbles, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4, and I bet it's less than 120 touches.
I agree. And
can a running back / receiver fumble 1 out of every 40 touches?
Not one that is trying to see an NFL paycheck coming in next year, right? But Bobby, to that point.
So my thought is it's not. While the 2 fumbles in one game is certainly Johnny come lately issue, right? I'm concerned about that long term for him.
Add in the drops too, because that's been an issue. So again, if job security, ball security is job security, and right now you see why this is becoming a conversation because he's loose with the football. So big game, you can't have those. We saw it last year against Washington.
Ball on the ground, not a good thing. Big Brown Bevo, that's a good thing. Thank you very much for the super chat. We appreciate it. I think having Quinn back and a mature O-line / coaching continuity helps Texas maneuver through the parity and trap-filled college football landscape. Thank you, Big Brown Bevo. I appreciate that. And at first, I love that point. You got a third-year starting quarterback who's been through a lot of adversity here at Texas. All right. You don't the coaching continuity, big part of that too. And the O-line maturity. I love all those aspects you bring up. And I'll throw out there something else I like. I like the fact that Texas got their wake-up call game right before the bye week against Mississippi State, where everybody's like, y'all didn't play to the standard. And then it was pretty obvious the coach thought they didn't play to the standard either because Coach Sark wasn't happy. And then got a chance to watch all the upsets in the bye week. I don't know if there was a better situation psychologically for this team that they got a chance to watch. So if you don't show up and you don't play to the standard, look what happens, gentlemen. It can happen to you. It will happen to you. If you go out there with a lackluster attitude and you do not execute and you're not focused and you turn the ball over and you got self-inflicted wounds and penalties and you're dropping passes, Bama got beat, Tennessee got beat, you can get beat too. And honestly, like I said, to me, that on top of what Big Brown Bevo pointed out there, I think also just the circumstance and the confluence of, upsets and the perfect storm of upsets, I think honestly, it's going to help Texas. There's no way that didn't have a psychological effect on this team watching those games and watching upset after upset and going, dog, that could be us, man. If we didn't show up, we gotta make sure we execute and play to a standard. That's why you play to a standard, because Bama didn't do it, Tennessee didn't do it, and when you don't do it, that could happen. It could be
on top of that, Rod. I mean, it was that was all we were hearing out of the Mississippi State game because Texas didn't start to its standard, right? It took that second half for them to really start to put pieces together and put that game out of reach. But that was the conversation. It was sloppy. It was a little sluggish. Going into the bye week, you wanted them to refresh and kind of get their legs back together, but also to be focused because, well, it wasn't pretty. Now it's going to be magnified a little bit more because of those big losses throughout the country. So 2 straight weeks of saying, hey, come ready to play.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's get to it. David Key Williams has a question here. He said, Rod Babers, I saw a comment today regarding which Longhorns need to step up most for UT to reach their potential. I think it's Jaden Blue on offense, Alfred Collins on defense. What's your view? That's a good question. All right, guys, real quick, because I know we're getting close to the end of our live stream here, but what are your thoughts about who needs to step up offensively and defensively for Texas to ultimately reach their ceiling as a team?
I think those are 2 good, solid choices right there, right? We talk about the running game and wanting to see more. Well, it starts with Jaden Blue. We talk about the fumbles. We talk about the drops. If his play takes the next step, what's the weakness on the Texas offense? I don't know if you have one. Defensively, again, Alfred Collins, I think he's been fine in the passing game. Run game, again, you'd like to see more. And it's almost an unfortunate spot for Alfred because it's not necessarily his strength to be a run-stopping defensive tackle. Because at 6'5", 320, his greatest strength, I would say, is his athleticism and how quickly he can get into the backfield. With that, he gets moved easier because he's not necessarily that rock that you want or had with a Devondre Sweat a year ago. So if you can get more out of Alfred Collins at any point, you have to take it. Other thing I want to say about Alfred is a really underrated part of him and Vernon Broughton's game so far this year is there's been a lot of passes deflected at the line of scrimmage this year, probably more so than we've seen under the PK, tenure here at Texas. And I got to credit the 2 of them because they're the ones consistently with a hand up in the air, putting the hands in passing lanes. And at some point, those tips passes, Rod, what do they say? Tips and overthrows. That's how DB makes his money, right?
Mm-hmm. Tip drill. Love that. I like that. That's a good point, though. I've noticed that too, CJ. We got some super chats here before we get to the end of it. How about this one from Scott Smith? He says, guys, last Red River rivalry contract, it says home team can choose to take the tunnel side. Do you think Texas would ever break with tradition? OU fans would melt. What are your thoughts on that, Bobby? I'll admit I'm a little ignorant about the contract and
I'm ignorant about the contract too, but I know what he's talking about. If that makes sense. So, and Rod, you do too, because you've run out of that tunnel.
I have run out of that tunnel.
When you run out of that tunnel, you run into OU fans toward Texas fans. The OU fans are literally now. It used to be worse. I think before you even played, Rod, that tunnel was not covered by a canvas or an apron.
They were throwing stuff. Okay.
So they would throw stuff, spit on you, that sort of stuff. Now there's an apron over the top, like a canvas, to let. And so back before, I thought that might be of value to actually change that so you didn't get hit by a, whatever the 5th of whatever that got thrown out from going in the fairground. But that's what he's talking about. I would say this. I bet Texas fans, if you polled them that have been to the game or Texas grads that have been to the game as a student, they love where they're situated. They love that end zone. It's like a rite of passage to be in that end zone, in my opinion, as a former student. So I wouldn't change it. And OU fans would melt, but so would some Texas fans. Texas fans don't want to move. That's right. That end zone's been the site of many of a great day in Longhorn history, in my opinion. So
beautiful. Love that. All right. Another super chat. UT 10 Rocks 2005. Thank you. Said, Rod, what do we have to do to get Sims on here? I don't know. I'll ask him. I mean, that's all you can do. I'll text him.
Hey, I got to say this. I saw a picture. Did I send you that picture, Rod? I don't know if I sent you a picture. Saturday afternoon, I got sent a picture of Colt McCoy and Chris Sims together in the NBC or the whatever studio.
Nice. Yeah, that's right.
Both doing the hook. I'll have to see if I can use that and show that to folks here.
That is badass. No, I would love that.
thought you would like that, Rod. I was going to send that to you.
Please send that to me. I would love that. That's pretty awesome. What people don't know is he's one of the proudest Longhorns that you'll ever meet. Like, he is super proud of his Longhorn time, even though it hasn't been back as much as we would want. So I think that's the mission. Try to get Sims back to Longhorn country. Come hang out in Austin, hang out with the team, hang out with the fam. That we haven't seen enough. Okay, how about this one from Juan? When was the last time in the Red River Rivalry Texas comes in at number 1? Okay, I want to say CB. CB does a great job with random research. I want to say he threw this out there, and I trust CB's research because he usually does a really deep dive. He said the last time Texas was ranked number 1 against Oklahoma was in 1963.
No, I think it was 1980.
Okay.
1984. That was the 15-15 tie. How about that?
Okay. All right.
That started Texas on a downward spiral that ultimately cost Fred Akers his job, by the way.
84?
That team, yeah. Blakeman wrote this earlier today, or actually just a few minutes ago on Twitter, Rod. Last time Texas was number 1 heading into the Red River rivalry, Steve Sarkisian was 10 years old.
Wow.
Gas was $1.20 a gallon. A stamp was 20 cents. Ronald Reagan was president, and minimum wage was $3.35.
Ooh,
what a time!
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah. And you said what was the outcome of that game? A tie?
84 was a 14-14 tie, I think, or 28. Was it 14-14 or 28-28? I can't remember.
Oh,
there were 2
either
ties.
Way, we don't want a tie. Either way.
Oh, now we don't get them anymore. That's great.
Yeah, either way, that's just not good. We hate that. Everybody hates that. Michael Williams, thank you very much for the super chat. We appreciate it. He says, before we get to that, let's thank our good friends at Rogue Shop before we take our last super chat here. RogueShop.com. Rogue Shop is bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Rogue Shop ships nationwide. Make sure you use the promo code ONTexas for a special discount. Rogue Shop has it all, from oils and creams to flour and gummies, whatever you need. RogueShop.com, they can supply. Use the code ONTexas for that very special discount, and make sure use ONTexas, and you'll get that special discount. They can ship nationwide, so anywhere you are, they can get it to you. Oils, creams, flour, gummies, and vitamins. So much more with RogueShop.com. Thank you very much to our friends over at Rogue Shop for sponsoring our Sunday night live stream. Michael Williams says, I'm slightly curious about how our pass D will hold up against a legit passer. At this point, we really haven't gone up against a good passing quarterback. What say you? Yeah, your basically your pass defense has had, I refer to it as open book tests all season long. You'll have a midterm against Georgia, and that will not be an open book test. But that's about it. You won't face a prolific elite passing game until maybe the SEC title game or maybe the college football playoff. That's just the legit.
Georgia, maybe?
That's why I said Georgia is the midterm. But other than that, you won't face. And by the way, they're not an elite passing offense. They got an elite quarterback, but that's not an elite passing offense by any stretch. You may not face a prolific elite passing game until the postseason. That's just reality. But Georgia can do that. Georgia can be that if they need to be.
I agree. Georgia's a weird team to watch because, again, they start so slow, and you think that maybe they're on upset watch again, and then it doesn't ever look easy with Georgia this year, and that's not what you expect with a really good offensive line and a quarterback that was, kind of considered to be the top guy coming into the season. So it certainly could still improve. And with Georgia's talent, I'll never count them out, but that's not the team that I expected to see so far this year. Yeah.
No, I agree. Yeah, but they can beat you that way if they need to. All right. Thank you guys for the super chats. We appreciate it. Michael, 1, UT10 Rocks, 2005, Scott. We appreciate that. Big Brown Bevo. We appreciate your super chats and all the questions from all you guys. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. I promise you this week we'll try to get to as many of them as we can, previewing Texas' upcoming game versus the Sooners. Make sure tomorrow you check out On Texas Football. We'll be back with Coffee and Football at 8 a.m. And, of course, you got the winning drive starting up at 3 with myself, CJ Vogel, and you got Coach Bob Shipley that will be joining us there. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for doing a great job as always. He's the real MVP. Thank you to CJ for hooking us up with all the nuggets of information. Bobby, thanks for joining us as well. We always appreciate your wisdom. And until next time, appreciate all you guys for watching and for listening. And until next time, we'll come home.
Welcome.